Hey folks, it's Steve from M4 LED. I'm going to give you a little demonstration on converting a thin-lite fixture, which is an exterior fixture. It's a model 162A to LED using a 12-inch tubes. Normally we get questions on the interior light fixtures, and they're easy to do. We give you instructions and have some samples on the website. This one does not have a sample on the website. Basically, it's a one that can sit outside your door, mounts up flush to the RV, and has the tubes. As with any of the fixtures, to do the conversion and to do any conversion properly to LED tubes, you're going to be rewiring the fixture to eliminate the ballast. Ballasts are prone to failure, ballast waste power, and they are unnecessary with the LED, so we eliminate that. And in its place, on a 12-inch tube, there is a external driver, 2 wires in, 2 wires out. 2 wires in connect to the RV and to the switch on the fixture. The 2 wires out connect to either end of the tube inside the fixture through the natural sockets. That would be the red and black. The blue and brown are the ones that connect to the RV. On a 2-tube fixture like this one, you need to have each tube has its own driver. Don't mix the red and black wires. Don't want to do that. Now, I haven't done one of these fixtures before, so we're going to do it together. Okay, so basically I hope you can see everything here on the workbench. It's just some basic hand tools for cutting and stripping the wires. Phillips screwdriver. I noticed that this one needed a small screwdriver to pop out some caps that are covering the screws. Our tube comes typically with the instructions and some wire nuts in there. If you can use crimps, it's always better to use a crimp, but if you use a wire nut, tape over it so it doesn't back out. And conversion sticker to say that it's been converted. This is a 2-tube fixture, so you need 2 tubes, and each tube is going to go in there into its natural sockets and turn into position. But behind the scenes, in the back of this, we need to get that driver installed where the current ballast is. So I'm just going to set that aside, get to work. I did notice on this one, and I've popped these out a little bit, you need something tight and sharp to get in there to pop off these covers. That'll give you access to be able to pull these covers off. So we'll get both of those out and keep everything organized. And I'm going to get a Phillips screwdriver to pop back out these, hopefully. And again, I haven't done one of these before. I've seen them, I've had a customer do one before, but I haven't had hands-on had one here. So that cap's coming off just to give us access to everything, nice and easy. I'm going to do both sides because it's going to give us better access. They only go in one way, so you don't have to worry about which side's left and which side's right. In a nutshell, we're going to notice that the on-off switch is out here, and we're going to notice that that's a black wire coming to the on-off switch. So the black wire is actually the power on a RV, kind of different than normal 12-volt. Uses more of a home coloring system where that's the power, and the white is going to be the ground a lot of times. So we have one of these wires that's going to the switch, and then from the switch it's going to the board. We still want the switch to work, so we're going to leave the black wire alone that's going to the switch, and we will be accessing the other black wire, and that's what will be tying into the blue or brown wires on the driver. The white wire into the fixture is the ground, and then we'll be doing the same thing with the grouping the wires for the 2 drivers on the power and ground side. Now, like I said before, each one has to have its own driver back there, so you want to through the back of the fixture, and this one's going to be feeding it through some holes. We're going to be getting a red and a black to this tube, and on the other driver we're going to have a red and black going to this tube. A common problem with overhead drivers is somebody will wire too quickly and they'll do this, or they'll do this, and then one tube will partially light, the other one won't light right, and it's really bad for the tubes in the drivers too. So make sure that you have one driver on one tube separately on that end of it. So I'm just going to gain a little bit of access to figure out what's going on here. This silicone is in our way, and the customer has the lens cover at home. I did not have them send that. It's not worth risking breaking it in shipment. So we do have to get this sealant off so that we have full access, and when you're reinstalling it back to the side of the RV, go ahead and place new sealant, especially where there's penetrations like that. So just from experience, I know this white wire generally goes to the ballast inside, and this black wire is going to the switch. We now know that this one is the one that is going to outside the fixture and will remain. The other black wire, which is going to the ballast, I'm going to it looks like there's a wire knot in there, a crimp-on type, so we can actually get as much length as possible. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off. That will be tied into both of the drivers for power. And I might as well work on this side too. This white one will be tied into both of them for ground. So I'm going to leave this. I'm saving that because we're going to need that once we tie everything together. It'll be going back into that back hole. Now I kind of want to get this driver out of here. It's hard to see in there, but the driver takes up quite a bit of space. We could probably wire around it, but it would be a little difficult. On these socket ends, there are 2 wires going to each of the socket ends. All we need is 1 wire to each of them. On the tube, these 2 pins are connected together, so if you're powering one, it's powering the other, and vice versa. So the one that I'm looking at now is this red wire, and it's just looped. So my plan is to take the red wire and not use this red wire that is looped. And I'm going to take that off. Now I didn't cut it completely flush for a reason. Is I really want to just put a little bit of electrical tape over the top of these. And hopefully I have some here, or I'm going to have to do that later, because you don't want those to ground out to the case or anything. You want that to be protected. These other 2 wires we're going to need to connect to the drivers, so I want as much length as possible so I can work with it. And I'm going to take this one off. That's for that socket. I'm going to take this one off, and that's going to be for that socket. So I have those 2. What we're going to do is designate one end of this fixture as power and one to ground. And you'll notice these tubes are also marked DC negative or DC plus. Because in a small tube, the driver is external, so these are polarity sensitive. It's going to light if this is power with the DC plus over here. It will not light that way once we're all done. So on the other side of the fixture, I'm basically going to do the same thing. I know from experience we have 4 wires going to the driver. Now I don't have a lot of room to pull these wires out, so I'm going to go ahead and get the driver loose. And you'll see these 2 pop rivets here. Those are what's holding the driver into the fixture. Once I drill these out, then I should be able to get the driver loose and push it out this end and give me more length of wire to work with here. So I'm using an oversized bit, and all I want to do is take the top off these rivets so that the rest falls through. Not drilling all the way through. And you notice just with that, the top of the rivet came off, and now the rivet should push through. Let's see if I can do it with this screwdriver. There it goes. That one's free. And this one, same thing. Just go until the top of the rivet comes off, which it's off. And I'm gonna push that one through. Now, and I haven't done one of these before, but in theory, the whole ballast, which is only a little circuit board, is going to come out the end of the fixture. And as if you can visualize it, those two wires were connected to these inside, and then these 4 wires are connected to these sockets. Same thing on this side is I only need 2 wires. So I'm going to use the outside one, so I'm going to leave this one long. So I have one on that. I'm going to leave this one short so I can put tape over it. I'm going to go ahead and leave this one short. And then I'm going to go ahead and leave this one long. So now, if you look at it, that, what I have is power coming into the fixture, going through the switch on, switch off. Power is going to go to the driver, and ground is going to go to direct to ground through that wire. And looking from the front, we need power to go to one end of the fixture, and we need ground to go to the other end of the fixture, and we're going to be connecting to these wires here. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other driver on these 2 wires here. Don't pay attention so much on what color all the wires are, because this isn't hot, this isn't power. You'll notice one's blue, one's brown, or one's red. Don't pay attention necessarily to the colors, more so pay attention to where they're going. I'm going to go get some small electrical tape. I'll be right back. Okay, I found my electrical tape. What I want to do is just take some small pieces of this, and on the ones that I cut off, I'm just going to tape them up a little bit. And what that's doing is just making sure that they don't ground out to the body for some reason, moving around and causing the fuse to go. Another piece there. Could have left those a little bit longer. You can put a connector over them. A few different ways you can do it, but tape seems to work as long as you get it on there good. And then we can also push those back in there too. You just really don't want it to hit the edge. Don't necessarily like the way this one is sitting though. So what I might do, and I will do, instead of using tape on these, I'm going to cut them off flusher, because this ends are slipping out, and what we really don't want is this touching this and causing an issue. So as best I can, cut those shorter and get those wires so they're not going to ground out at all. I actually can push those back in there where they're going to be very safe and secure. We're good on that. That's way up in there. It's not gonna ground out on anything or cause any problems. Almost happy with it. so that's in there. That other one still has tape on it. I have these other two. Hopefully we're still in screen here as I do this. I'm going to do this one a little bit more over the top. In hindsight, I would have left them a little bit longer, but we're good. Sorry if my hands are in the way, it's a little awkward working around it, but get the idea. Alright, so those extra wires are away. They're not going to ground out on anything. And we'll be good to go. Alright, so now let's get the drivers in. Just for clarity, I'm going to call this side of the fixture the positive end. And I'm going to call this side of the fixture the ground end. And we're going to take one of these drivers. And the driver is going to sit in this cavity behind the fixture. But we do need to get the power connected to this socket. And the ground to another. Now you could use the wire nuts that come with the kit. Just when you put a wire nut on, always tape over the top and then tape a little bit over the wires nice and tight so that bouncing down the road the wire nut doesn't want to undo. On this one, to make it a little cleaner, I'm going to use some wire crimps. You do, for wire crimps, need a crimping tool. Again, this one's for a little bit different terminal, but I have always used one of these and they work great. It's a real solid connection, puts a dent in it, that is going nowhere. And get the hairs all twisted together. Get that in there all the way. Crimp that into place, and that's going nowhere. There's nothing hanging out. I don't feel like I need to cover that with tape or anything like that. Now this one has to go down to this socket too. This on the other side, that happens to be the red one. So what I do need to do is feed this through the cavity in the back. And you notice I'm doing one at a time because then I won't mix up and I won't get it mixed up and crisscross the wires like I had showed you before. Hopefully this is showing. There she is. And I'm going to put the rest of the driver in there for now. Now this is on this one positive. This one's going to be your ground. Go ahead and strip this one back too. Again, going to use wire nut, or sorry, a crimp. Get that one in nice and tight. Other side nice and tight. Make sure that's going in all the way and not hitting the other side. It is going in all the way on this one. And that's in there. With any crimp, give it a little tug, make sure you're happy with that. That'll get shoved back in after. So now I have power, I have ground on this one. I need to do the second driver, power and ground, and then after that I'm going to tie together the other wires on the driver. When these are packed from us, you get the tube, little protective coating or covering for packing for when they rub and bounce, and then inside the box is going to be that driver. And also note that on these tubes there's a protective film. When we're all done, you pull that off, it just keeps it from getting scratched as we're doing the work to it. Okay, So next one, this one is going to be positive again, ground to the other. It's going to be on the second tube. So that's this blue wire here, goes right to that socket, and strip it again. Thing about these, well, this is an outdoor fixture, so it's not like you have 10, but when you do inside fixtures, you might have 4 or 5 of the same fixture. The first one takes you a little bit of time. I'm going to cut this one off a little bit. It's a little longer than the other one was. Once you do one, all the other ones become quicker and take about half amount of time. Being that I haven't done one of these before, take a little bit more time, like on how to fish that wire through the bottom. So I have those two nice crimp, and again the black wire is going to connect to the blue one down here. So again, I need to feed it all the way down the tube without getting it stuck, or down the fixture. See if we get luckier this time. I can see where it's going. Straight. Trying it flat first, and then we'll do gravity. Going across. There she is. It's right there. There it goes. And get the driver down this side a little bit so I get a little room to work with it. The end of this one's a little bit long again, so we'll bring that down. This one we are going to strip it. Maybe, yeah, we're okay on that one. It's close. You want it, it's going in there. I'll probably do a little bit more if you look at how far that's going in. Tiny bit. As much bite as possible, and then again, if the wires can touch inside, it's a better connection than if they're separated inside, spread apart. You want them, if possible, the wires to touch to get the best connection. Even kind of weave together in there. All right, that one done. This one done. Little tug, we're good. So these sockets are all wired to the drivers now. Now what I have on the drivers is I have 2 blue wires, 2 brown wires. We do call these out in the instructions as the blue one being the negative, the brown one being the positive. Actuality, it doesn't matter. It's a non-polarity circuit in that driver. The driver, number one, controls the voltage. If you do not use a driver, you will ruin the tube and it will not be warrantied. It is critical, mission critical, to have the driver in the circuit. Number two, so it provides a common about 11.5 volts to the tube, and your RV can charge it, up to 15 volts. And if it's doing that and you supply 15 volts directly to this, it's going to ruin it. It needs a driver. On the bigger tubes, the driver is inside the tube. On the smaller ones, to have a proper sized driver, it needs to be external. There are people that will sell tubes with drivers inside. They're not properly sized, they're too small. So what I'm doing is I'm connecting the two browns. We will go ahead and do that as a positive. We're going to connect the two blues. We'll do that as negative. Now some of you guys are saying, hey, European cars are normally brown ground. You can do it the other way too, it doesn't matter. So this is going to get a little trickier because we do need to connect to this wire, and I'm have this crimp connector, and I'm going to leave it there because it's giving me extra room to work with, and it's a good solid crimp connection, so I'm not worried about it. I'd rather have a little bit of room to work with. So I'm going to strip that guy, and we're going to the positive. Now we're going to look a little trickier because I need to get this brown wire into the fixture connected to this one behind this panel in the tube. So I'm going to try to fish this through and poke it out this hole, do the connection here. I'm going to tighten these again. Actually, I got a better idea. I'm going to take these two. I'm going to go ahead and crimp this side of it with the two of them together. I'm going to reduce the length of that slightly. That way I only have to feed one thing in there. Make sure you got those all the way in. They will pop in. You'll notice the wire sometimes on our stuff is thinner. They are properly gauged for the amount of power that you're drawing. There's no need to oversize it and waste as much as undersize. So now my goal is to get this guy up out through this hole, so that we can connect it to the power wire that's coming from the switch. And hopefully if I get this just right, I'm going to go past that hole. Or we're going to do it a different way. I need about that much length. A little bit of glue in there too, and it's hitting against the glue, but I see it there. And I have this back hole, so I'm going to go ahead and poke it through there. Now I've threaded it through. That is my power that's coming in from outside the RV, going through the switch, connecting to here, and then going to those two drivers. Get that in there nice all the way. Get the crimpers again. This firm connection, not going anywhere, and this can actually be fed back in there. Before I do that though, I'm going to do the two blue wires. And the two blue wires are connecting to the ground of the coach. So we're going to put those two together. Another connector. Let's see on the depth. We're good there. Make sure you're not getting hung up. Make sure they're well twisted together so they don't, one doesn't pull out without the other. Twist, pull it into position. They're in deep enough so there's no metal ends sticking out. And there we go. Now you're going to remember this was the ground wire that goes to the coach, and I had cut it off and it needs to go into the back too. What my plan is on this guy is I'm just going to go ahead and do all the work here. Strip it. I know different people have different techniques. Been wiring stuff for probably 40 years, and it works for me. Some people hate wiring. I don't mind wiring. This is pretty straightforward if you just think of it one wire at a time. Crimp that in. And now I need to get this back through the fixture, and instead of coming out this front hole, it needs to come out the back hole where the other power wire is. I'm going to give it a little bit of bend in the direction I think it should go. Wait till I can see it here at the top. No, it's close. And it's right in there. I know it's hard to see on in the video. I'm going to use a little screwdriver to reach in there and to push it out the back. Oh, almost. There we go. So now that's in there. So now, if we go through the whole thing again, we got power coming in the black wire, it goes to the switch, it goes out the other black wire, goes to the drivers, and then the other end of the drivers for ground connect to this wire, that connects to the coach. And then the other driver, the red and the black, go red and black here, positive end down here being the red, and the other tube here, red and black. So now I need to do is keep these two wires out, but get all this stuff inside. In this particular fixture, the switch is right there, so it kind of sits there. And make sure those wires aren't against anything sharp. Put a little tape around them if you want. And then we just need to take all these wires and get them inside. And this is this side of the fixture. That kind of pushes over the top. There's really not a way to put it in wrong. Nice and or just snug. You don't want to tighten it down too much. You don't want to over tighten it. Now this whole mess of wires just needs to go down into the fixture. Basically the ballast was in there before. Just work them around, get them in there. Okay, I'm going to make sure that other wire and that one's tapes off, but it's right where it's not going to ground out on anything. We're all good. And we'll get that other cap in position, the other screw. Okay. And then we have the little top caps. We're going to go ahead and put those back into the holes. I'm confident that we're wired correctly. We're going to go ahead and take the extra covering off these and DC plus to the positive end. This particular one, it drops in there and twist it into position. Aluminum goes to the back on the heat sink. Our tubes have aluminum heat sinks, so they last a long time. And so they go in sideways and then twist it so the aluminum's in back. I'll have to tell him to make sure that if it's bouncing in transit or anything, it doesn't come loose. So that should be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and strip these a little bit. I don't normally do installs and stuff, but when somebody's stuck and it's a different fixture and I have the opportunity, I'll help out. Somebody's parked in the parking lot and brought one in for me before too. Different style, but one with a ballast cover that was harder to get to. Now you notice that the ballast on these, this is different than a home ballast that's a big heavy piece. Basically it works the same way. The original fluorescent tubes are higher voltage, and you need to electrocute the gas. When you flip the switch, this electrocutes fluorescent gas in order to ignite it, and then it backs off the power, so it'll use less power and sustain. But these tend to fail, just like the ones at home. And nowadays you can't even buy these things. They're pretty much obsolete. If you were to find one, I've seen them for like 85 bucks, and it's just not worth it. The tube route, use less power, get better lighting. and everything else. All right, now we just need to get this to a battery source so you can see what we did. One thing I forgot to show you is we do give you a decal to say that it's been converted to LED, so somebody doesn't try to put a fluorescent tube in. It won't hurt anything, it'll just be frustrating while they try to do it. So I took that out, took my blue tape off, and making sure I'm DC plus to that end still, and putting that back into the position. Now we can test it again. This is kind of hidden up in there, so it won't really show. Okay, so we're back in the showroom. I have the fixture, I have the lights off so that we can see what's going on. I have a couple leads here on my test board, and try not to shock myself. And just got to hold these wires together. And away we go. Much brighter fixture. My arm's in the way, of course, but you can see what's going on. Tilted downward. Works like a charm, and this will use half the power. You're not going to have any more failed ballasts, and continue the life of this fixture without changing the look on the outside of the RV. M4LED.com.